Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. This is Aaron Davis, and I am a lone tactical twin because Eric, he seems to be taken away by the Army again. But we still have an awesome show, an awesome guest. I'm excited because, on the subject of holsters, there are some great holster companies out there. And, of course, one is a sponsor of our show. That's Tennecore Holsters. They make some amazing gear and some of my favorite gear. But you know what? They don't make holsters for every gun out there, and their holsters don't fit everybody. So I have some go-tos that I also mention. And one of my major go-tos is PHLster. But I am excited to have Sarah Hauptman on the line here. So excited because she has one of the coolest holster and concealed carry gear companies I can think of. And again, welcome so much, Sarah. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I met you at TACCon last year, and we started a little conversation talking about, the enigma, of course. Now, it's hard to talk about PHLster without the amazing enigma that you guys developed, but I don't want to spend all the time on that. But we had a good conversation. And at that point, I thought, okay, I have to have her on sometime. And so here we are. But Sarah, real quick, before we get too much further, why don't you go ahead and give a quick intro and, a little bit of background on yourself?
Oh, well, thanks again for having me. So my name's Sarah Hauptman. I kind of jokingly call myself the first lady of PHLster, married into the company, I guess you could say. But before I ever thought about anything Enigma related, before I really even was into concealed carry, I started out as a competition shooter and an activist. And that path has kind of slowly led me further into the industry, and that's where I met my husband and kind of ended up where I am today.
Awesome. Now, it's interesting that you said it like that. Now, maybe I am mistaken, but I spoke to a mutual friend of ours the other day, and I got the idea that maybe you weren't always a gun person. Is that the case? And if
Yeah.
so, how did that change? How were you before? Let's start from there, and then what drug you into this? And then you said you became an activist of some sort.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens. So I was not raised with guns. We never had guns growing up, and that was a foreign idea, for our household. Nobody in my immediate family hunted. Nobody shot recreationally, and nobody, if they, I'm sure some of them owned guns, but never talked about it. So it just wasn't on my radar at all. And then this is probably, boy, time keeps flying by, and I want to say, oh, it was about 10 years ago, but actually it was probably more like 14 or 15 now. But a good while back, my mom was looking for a family bonding activity, and she saw this ad for a shooting class, and she's like, let's go take a shooting class together because it's fun and it's all right. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's try it. So we went to class. In hindsight, it was maybe not the best of classes, but we had a great time. And we left that class, holding up our targets all proudly, and we're like, let's go buy guns. So the next week we went out and bought our first guns, and we kind of shot together just for fun and for bonding. And I really quickly realized that, I kind of suck at this. I think I should get better at this. So then I went online and started researching and learning how to shoot, how to hit what you're aiming at. And I came across some YouTube videos of IDPA. I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. All right, that looks really fun. So I started researching that. I found a mentor in that sport, and that kind of put me on the path towards having somewhat of a clue. I didn't do competition for very long. And I never went to any kind of high level or anything, but it was really good background. And it was a good way to kind of get into the gun community and the shooting community kind of at a, I don't want to say a higher level, because it wasn't a higher level, but in a different segment of the community that's a little more focused on excellence, which was
Mm-hmm.
cool. It was a cool path into it. I got to kind of skip a lot of the struggles that most people have when they first come into this community. I still had a lot of the same struggles when it came to concealed carry, but as far as, being safe, being accurate, and kind of just learning how to handle and master the gun, I got put on a good path really early. So that was very lucky, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so from there, um, I kind of realized I started, shooting for fun, and then I shot competitively here and there. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. I feel comfortable with this gun. I can handle this gun. And I started thinking, maybe, it is my right to be able to carry a gun. Maybe I should learn how to carry a gun. So I kind of started getting into that as well. And once I started getting into that, I was like, this is cool. Like, this is something special. Like, this is something powerful here. And as soon as I realized that I had that kind of, I guess, empowerment, you could call it, then I realized, okay, I want to protect that right. And that's what got me into activism.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of why PHLster has such a strong mission to help people who are at the beginning of their journey. Because part of it is we really feel like the more people who can successfully and comfortably carry their firearm, the more people are going to stay in the community. It's really frustrating when you start concealed carry, and shooting is fun and social, and competition is fun and social. Then you get to concealed carry, and it's frustrating and it's lonely, and it's expensive, and it's an exit point for a lot of people. So part of our philosophy is the more we can educate, the more we can kind of make a path for people to get to the degree of excellence they want, the more people will retain in this community, and the better our overall future looks as gun owners.
Well, excellent. And I love hearing how you put that, because looking at your website, someone can take a look there and realize, without you even saying that, that's got to be one of your missions, or your, because whenever I first started shooting, I got the same pistol my brother got. It was a Ruger this or that. Got a holster that looked good to me, right? That this will work. Yeah, this looks good. And then through the years, you get 100 holsters, and without any direction, and likewise without any direction on how to draw your firearm, how to reholster your firearm. So these aspects are things that many gun owners do not even know they need to educate themselves on. But back to the fact about concealed carry, you're so I believe that you and your husband, his name's John, correct?
Yep.
Yes, that John and you put on a seminar at TACCon that was essentially about really dialing in, getting comfortable with carrying, concealing better, etc. And then that leads to the fact that on your website, you also have a really cool page called "The Basics of the Mechanics of excuse me, the Basics of Concealment Mechanics." So can you expound on a little bit at least that seminar, how that went at TACCon?
Yeah. We're actually doing another one this year, so that'll be, I believe it's
Awesome.
April 5th through 7th this year. So yeah, so that class, let me back up a little bit. So I'll explain how we got to that class first, and then that'll kind of give some
Okay.
background for how we ended up
Great.
there. Because it's not a super normal thing for a holster company. But so rewinding back to I think it was 2021 maybe that we released the Enigma. We thought the Enigma, it's a holster that you can wear without a belt on your pants. And we thought, okay, this is cool. It's complicated. It works really well. We're going to sell like 50 of these to people we know on a first name basis. And then maybe 5 years down the line, it'll start to catch on and get popular. And what actually happened was we did a couple of videos about it. We had a launch, and our launch sold out in like 22 minutes. And then John
Wow.
quietly panicked. And we thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because we just absolutely could not handle the volume of business that was coming our way. And that was an incredible blessing, which we're obviously super grateful for. But it was also a crisis from a business perspective, because we now had a complicated, difficult product, and we had a new customer base with no history with us, no real particular reason to trust us, and they didn't have the same knowledge overlap as the customers we were expecting. Like we made the Enigma to fit a holster with the Modwing. Most of the people that we kind of made it for have 20 holsters like the box of holsters, and they've probably got 20 of them with Modwings on, and so we assumed a lot of kind of background knowledge. And when we started expanding into this kind of broader gun community, we realized really quick, we're like, oh, we have to scale up our educational resources, and we have to do it now. Because if people get this product and all they get is a box of parts and they don't know what they're for, it's going to sink our company. So we're in a position where we had to rapidly scale our educational resources. So we started doing that with a video series. We did a series of graphics, like memes, kind of that you can share. And then we started expanding further and further, blog, everything. And I think as we were kind of doing that, and we were encountering more and more people, more and more different body types, more and more kind of interesting case studies, we started developing some formulas so that we could take the, kind of the magic of how to get good concealment and make it something that anyone can do. So that's how the resources were born. And as those resources got shared more and more, it then became the thing where, we'd start getting invited to conferences to teach classes, which for us, and again, amazing opportunity, which we were really happy to do, and also completely unprepared for. So we started expanding into, in-person teaching curriculum. So that was the basis for all of this. It started as a crisis, became an incredible opportunity, and now we continue it not just for the brand, but as kind of part of our mission to give back to the community. And it's not political in nature, but again, you retain more people in the community. People have more success, they have more investment, and they become activists. So it's something to protect the rights that we care about for future generations.
Well, that's a really good way to put it, and a really good way to look at it. Because yes, when people get involved in this world, they realize actually how, frankly, loving of a world, how inviting of a world it is. And it's not just because people want to gather more gun people. It's because it's almost like sharing the gospel. We're sharing the gospel of living a self-sufficient life, being able to protect yourself. But at the same time, there's all these other things that come along with that. Friendship, you delve into exercise, you do competition, you do all these things that you're active where maybe you weren't before. So it's awesome to have a different kind of way to encourage that in people. And I just have to say again that the resources on your website. I mean, it's full of resources. There's funny stuff on there. There's just really well produced videos, and I think maybe it was when I'll bring her up in a little bit, speaking to one of our mutual friends, that it was I've started all these things that I teach to people. It's like, man, why do I have to send a text here, type a big text when I can send them to these awesome videos on the site,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no,
But yeah,
that's totally the goal. And, we thought, okay, this is stuff. John's been making holsters for, boy, well over 10 years. I couldn't give an exact estimate. Maybe 13, 14 years, something like that. And he's learned so much over those years that used to be kind of just arcane magic. If you made holsters, you would know it, but if you didn't, you wouldn't. And some of it's things that people have figured out, especially people who you have to carry a gun professionally. So they have to make it work. They have to figure it out. And they just kind of learn how to adapt, and they learn how things work. Well, what we're trying to do is take that decade of knowledge, that you would learn the hard way, and we're trying to condense that down into little nuggets that we can give people when they're starting out. So it's like you've taken that decade of experience, and now you've got, 30 minutes of video that can get you almost to that point, just on your first day. So that's the goal. But I think what you said really kind of resonated with me, that the community is more than it appears from the outside. And it really is a deep and life-enriching thing. And people don't realize that. And I know I certainly didn't, because I wasn't a gun person coming into this. And I kind of had some misconceptions. I'm like, the gun people, they're kind of weird. They're strident and weird. And as soon as I actually got into it and started becoming a part of the community, I realized how welcoming it was. Even for me, as someone who is different looking, different speaking, different background than a lot of the people that were pre-existing in that community, they were just like so happy to share what they were passionate about. Like, people were so generous with their time, generous with their expertise, with their resources. And I wish more people knew about that, from outside that community. It's not obvious, but it is real.
Yeah, and I will often say to people, it's the same thing with competition. A lot of people are scared to do competition. I'm an IDPA. I've the biggest match I've ever done was a Oklahoma State match,
Mm-hmm.
but I do fairly well at the local level. But it really more is about just getting a lot of trigger time, solving a few little puzzles with your gun in your hand. And it teaches you a lot about muzzle awareness and, again, thinking with the gun in your hand, not thinking about your shooting. But I say all that to say that the community in the shooting sports too. I don't know how many times I say it, but every time I try and get someone to go, like, oh, I'm not that good of a shooter. And I'll say, you can be the worst shooter there. You can walk through, miss all your targets, take 15 minutes to get through the stage, and everybody's going to cheer you on the whole time.
100%,
But
100%. And that's another thing I wish more people knew, is like, you don't have to be good. I never won a match. Who cares? I just went and had a great time with my friends. And it does teach you some things that you won't learn just standing at a range, standing in the same place every time. It really is different. It teaches you how to run your gun a little more automatically, so it frees up a little more brain power so you can think a little more, which is really valuable. And anyone at any level can benefit from that. And I try to tell people, consider it a success if you show up and you're safe. That's the only thing you have to worry about. You don't have to be the fastest one there. Just be safe. That's it.
That's excellent.
And
That's added to what I usually say, and that's just I say you're winning literally for just showing up.
mm-hmm.
Because think of the other people that just didn't show up, that they, not shunning those people, but a lot of it's nerves, etc. But if you show up, get over your nerves a little bit, then you're going to realize how fun it is. Speaking of my wife finally admitted that she's going to shoot a match with me this year. So
Excellent.
Becky, if you're listening, um, here's Sarah. She's encouraging you also. You hear all she's saying? I'm not making it up, am I, Sarah?
No, absolutely not. And the thing is, too, I understand, especially when you're doing something that you're not real comfortable doing, you really don't want a lot of people watching you. But I can say I have never, at any match, at any place or time that I have been at, I have never seen anyone judged for shooting badly. Nobody cares. They don't care.
Right.
They're just happy that you're there as long as you're being safe. That's the only thing they care about. So the only standards that are on you are the ones you put on yourself. So you can kind of let those go. It's okay. Be imperfect. Give yourself permission to learn and make mistakes and have a great time doing it.
Boy, excellent way to put it. Well, I would like to go on and talk about the enigma a little deeper. And I wanted to state it like this, bring up a, a story that kind of hits a little bit home here. Actually, it happened in my city. We had at a hospital here, we had a man that had back surgery 2 weeks prior to this incident, and one can just assume he was in a lot of pain, maybe pain meds or whatever meds he had put him in a really bad mental state. Whatever the case was, he went in and shot the receptionist, shot a person in the clinic, shot another doctor in the clinic, and then shot his surgeon that did back surgery on him, and then killed himself.
Mm.
He killed every single one of them. And at that point, I mean, just tragedy. And yet at that point, my friend, a very good friend of mine, she is a nurse. And of course, like many people, she just did not carry because she couldn't, and for multiple reasons. But she came to me and asked my suggestion. I literally didn't think about it for more than about 5 seconds. I sent her to your website and said, you need to get set up with an Enigma. This will allow you to carry in your scrubs. This will allow you to carry discreetly with a small pistol, and you will have it if, unfortunately, you need it. So, I mean, it really was a game changer for a lot of people. I mean, I know there's probably been people that have grabbed duct tape and, cut up leather belts, etc., and strapped things on that, that wasn't easy to get off and on. And, they came up with the solution. But you and your husband at PHLster came up with this solution that is brilliantly executed, very, very easy to use once someone knows how to do it, extremely versatile, can be used in many, many ways. So I would love to hear, at least some basics of how that came about, because I know it's neat here. And even before we talk about this, how, it put you guys in emergency mode. You didn't think it was going to be as demanded as it is now, but so it's neat having that. But how did you get from having your new holster company starting to create that particular product?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I do appreciate that a lot. So the backstory there. So the Enigma concept has been around for over a decade. Now, that started out as a holster called the YP. That was for a yoga pants holster, because it was beltless. And that was created by a company called Runcible Works, who they basically made it for federal agency members who had to carry concealed in their line of duty. And so that's kind of the basis of it. That's where it came from. So the YP holster was a Kydex holster with an integrated belt that you wore under your clothes. And it had a leg leash to hold it down. So when you draw the gun, especially when you're entangled or when you're grappling, wrestling around with somebody, when you draw the gun, it doesn't come up out of your pants and follow your draw. So the belt system and the leg leash system, those were already existing. And those worked amazingly well. The only problem was they were made one at a time. They were totally bespoke, and you couldn't get one. Because funny enough, before I ever met John, I tried to get one. And there was a waiting list. I think the waiting list was like 6 months long, and I was like, oh, forget it. So they were kind of like unobtainium. And so, life went on, and I tried some other things that were not advisable or safe in hindsight. Don't do what I did. I fumbled around and did a lot of really stupid stuff trying to figure this out. But anyway, fast forward. And when I first met John, he was talking to the owner of Runcible Works, trying to figure out a way, like, okay, this is a brilliant idea, but there's no way we can scale it to meet the demand that it could have. How can we mass produce this? And so they started coming up with some different prototypes. And the basic idea was this: rather than making one holster for one person to fit their exact body type and their exact needs and their exact duty requirements, what if we could make one platform that each user could configure to their own body? So it had to be widely adaptable. It had to be able to survive a fight, a real fight for your life, not just like twirling in front of the mirror, which is most of what you see in holster ads these days. And it had to be zero signature, meaning no clips, nothing visible on the outside of the clothing to indicate that there's a gun present. And it had to have what we now call concealment mechanics, which basically means it had to have a way to make the gun tuck into the body tightly for best concealment. So those were kind of our list of requirements. And John and the owner had come up with a couple of good prototypes, and they worked pretty darn well. And we just kind of all kept looking at them and thinking, these are pretty good. I don't know, something's missing. It's just not quite there yet. And we went back to the drawing board a couple times. And meanwhile, John had bought this material called Tegris. He bought a big sheet of it, and it was sitting in my living room, and I had to walk by it every day. And one day I walked by it, and I was like, hey, John, can I have a piece of this? I know it's really expensive, but can I just have a piece to mess with it? And he's like, sure, go ahead. So I took my scissors and I hacked a piece off of it, and I made a curved boomerang shaped, like early Enigma faceplate. Actually, I wish I would have, if I would have thought of this, I would have gotten my barrel of prototypes out to show you what it actually looked like. It was very primitive.
But you still have that though?
Yeah, I got a box of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, I have one of every iteration that we've made kind of along the way, and a lot of dead ends along that path too, but that's how the process works. So yeah, we tried that faceplate. I bolted a holster onto it, and I put it on, and I looked down, and I was like, my gun is gone. It's gone. And I showed John, and John looked at it, and he turned it over in his hand, and he's like, I'm like, what's wrong? I thought this was cool. And he's like, well, back to the drawing board. This is awesome, but it completely obliterated our last 2 years of work. I'm like, okay. but it ended up working out great. And I think part of the process of going down all those dead ends of all the different things we tried that didn't work that great, it made it that much quicker to really recognize when something was working. So we took that faceplate idea. John redesigned it and made it have variable flexibility. So it actually can do a little bit more than a belt can do, because your belt goes over the face of the holster, and you put pressure on the belt. It pulls the gun in kind of in one way. But what the Enigma allows you to do is have part of it be more flexible than the rest, so you can get more grip tuck on the gun. So stuff like that. John is brilliant. He's an incredible designer. So he took that primitive, ugly concept and made it something really like kind of high tech and cool looking. That worked about twice as well as the one I had made. And it was all based on that original idea from Runcible Works back in the day. So it was kind of a 3-part, kind of trifecta of coolness. And each part was necessary for it to work, and it all kind of just miraculously came together.
Well, it's funny. I remember the first time I saw one, and it was Paul Sharp had one, and basically he showed this picture of this, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, okay, this is something new. This is a game changer. I know that's cliche, but it was along those lines. And I remember looking at it, it's more on this later, but as a man, why would you need that? I don't understand. You just use a holster, just the often the Dunning Kruger effect we all suffer from sometimes. And then I kept looking at that. That does look really cool. And then I further saw even more. And then about a year later, I was at a Cecil Birch seminar, and he had multiple enigmas so people could use them in the evolutions.
Oh, cool.
And I was able to mess with one even more. And it's funny that the material, what is the material called, you said?
It's called Tigris.
Well, when I saw it, I literally thought, how is this metal thing going to work?
It does look metal. We've had a lot of people think that. Tigris is what? Tigris is a woven polymer. So it's layers of. It's basically like a plastic fabric that is then heat pressed. And when you heat press it, it kind of becomes one unit, and all the fibers kind of stick together. So what you end up with is this really neat product that is stiffer than almost anything else for a unit of weight. So that's why we chose that for the Enigma. We needed a way to hold the holster up that was going to be stable and going to be stiff, but also had some flexibility. Not floppiness, but some flexibility. But we tried like leather, for example, and that was just like too floppy. And we did try some harder materials as well, and they didn't give us the the control over the concealment dynamics of the gun that we wanted. So this material kind of just ended up in the right place at the right time, and there it was.
Well, it is an amazing design, and again, my friend that purchased hers, I've seen her use it a few times, and it's just completely disappeared. And then one other time, not too long ago, I took a class with Daryl Bulkey and Cecil Birch and Chuck Haggard, and there was this young girl there. She had to have been only about 23 years old. She was probably 90 pounds, and she wore yoga pants and tight clothes the whole time. You would never know that she had a Smith & Wesson shield on all the time in her yoga pants.
That's
And of course,
awesome.
she was. I mean, seriously, when when we went to the line to shoot, she started to get ready. I thought, where did that come from?
Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
This is from one of our customers. This was a couple of years ago. Somebody shared it. We have a Facebook group called the PHLster Concealment Workshop. It's like a big user group, and it's got like 30-some thousand people in it. Just
Oh, wow.
people who have tried the product, who like the product, who don't like the product, and everybody shares their opinion. It's awesome. So join it if you haven't already, folks. But
Yes.
so, anyways, somebody posted in the group that they took their Enigma to a competition, and I think it must have been IDPA because at the time, yeah, I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was USPSA because one or the other had allowed the Enigma, but the other one didn't, and now I don't recall which is which. But anyway, so this customer shows up. He's got his gun and his magazines, and he's concealed. I think he had a T-shirt or something over it. And he stepped up to the line, and the RO looked at him and said, "You need a pistol to compete, son." He just pulled his shirt up and was like, "Okay."
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
that line is a classic. If you're in the workshop, you'll probably hear that one. Like, that's kind of a running joke. You need a pistol to compete.
Awesome.
Oh, it's great.
Well, and I mean, again, I just anyone that needs deep concealment and especially doesn't want to wear a belt, it's just incredible. And that actually kind of that's a decent segue and into the, of course, challenges that women have concealing guns. And of course, the Enigma is one of those solutions. But there's so many aspects of the concealed carry equation, I guess you could say, again, and how you put it, the mechanics of concealment. When you talk to a new gun owner, when you explain to them, okay, yeah, you've got your gun. Before we even get to a class, right? You need to at least have a good holster, and that's I'm misspeaking there about classes, but what I mean is when they get their new gun, you tell them they need $100 holster and $100 belt just to start out. They think you're nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to conceal again, and let's be clear too. Our show is a self-defense show for the most part. My focus as a pistol instructor is teaching people how to carry a gun. So that's my focus. But when you tell someone that they need that gear, and it's usually why can't I just use this Uncle Mike's holster or this pocket holster and my leather belt from Walmart? But it really is a huge difference in the ability to carry your gun comfortably, to conceal it correctly, etc. But that problem even gets deeper for women. So it would be interesting to you being female and the fact that you've come up with a lot of great solutions for females. Maybe you could go into that. What are some concerns? Like for me as a male that teaches females sometimes, and I would like to continue to have more female only classes. The things that I need to consider and the other male instructors in the audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. But I want to just real quick address the budget thing first. So the way it works, we all have heard buy once, cry once, and you get what you pay for. And that's kind of true. It's kind of true.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, there's a high barrier to entry for what is a fundamental civil right. It doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to spend a ton of money in order to conceal well. But the catch is this. If you're not ready to invest a dollar amount in getting a kind of off the shelf comfortable solution, that is cool and I support you. And what you need to do instead is really invest in your education. You can do that for free on YouTube. Start on our channel. There's tons of stuff there. Go to Tessa Booth's channel. There's tons of stuff
Mm-hmm.
there. And the information is out there. But it takes some work. You can either put the time or the money into it. Pick which one you have. Hopefully you have one or the other. So what I'm trying to say is you don't have to spend $1 million in order to be successful with concealed carry. You can absolutely do it on a budget, but it does require much more upfront investment in education. So with that out of the way, for women especially, a lot of the barriers to entry for concealed carry are again, they're kind of rooted in that education space. So when you talk about concealed carry for women, what most people immediately think of is the differences between men's and women's body types. And they think, well, of course, women have different shaped bodies. They must have a more difficult time concealing. Not the case. Not the case. There's more difference between woman A and woman B than there is between all women and all men. There's more variation in body types, within a gender than, with all of humanity. Like, sure, there are trends for sure. There's some body types that are more common. But there's so much individual variation that there's really no way to generalize, which holster will work best for women. And you see that a lot, especially with new shooters, which I know you see a lot of, what holster should I buy my wife? Or, I'm a woman, what holster should I buy? As if there were a ready-made product that would work for all of those wide range of body types. And that's just not the case. But again, the answer for this one, like, is kind of a common theme here. Everything I say revolves around this point. The answer for that is in the education space. Because once you learn how the mechanics of the gun work, you can start to learn where to place it on each different body type, and then how to make the gun stay flat against that body type wherever it ends up being, right? So you end up, if you were to look at female body types and try to figure out where the best, locations and, options are for them to conceal, you can kind of start to develop trends just based on overall, like, this person is pear-shaped, this person is apple-shaped, this person has a, more straight body type. You can kind of develop general trends, but you might have a woman who's straight and you might have a man who's apple-shaped, and those two are going to be, very dissimilar. But, what I'm trying to encourage people to do is just look at what's in front of you, rather than tying it to an expectation. Because what I see over and over again is people will buy a holster because it worked for another woman who may or may not be built anything like them. Or, somebody on Reddit said this was the best holster for women, and I tried it on and it's awful. It's like, yeah, it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. As far as general difficulty concealing, I would say many women's body types are equally as easy to conceal as men. So typically women tend to have less clothing drape. So if you're looking at the areas of the clothing that are draped and not the ones that are stretch tight, they typically will have less clothing drape at the waist, but more clothing drape at the bust. So just by moving the location where you're carrying that firearm on the body, you can take advantage of those areas. So I would say the average woman does not have a physically harder time concealing than the average man. But the difference mainly is in clothing. And again, that's kind of obvious, but women's clothing is a lot less likely to have belt loops. And even if it does, the style of clothing, even if it has belt loops, belts are going to look weird on a lot of women's clothes. Like it's out of place. It's not normal. Women's clothing tends to be lighter, more clingy fabrics, and that's definitely an extra challenge. So while the body types don't make that much of a difference, the clothing certainly does. And that can definitely be challenging. So, yeah, I mean, as far as what advice I would give, it's actually the same, depending on the audience, if you're at an all women's class and you want to speak specifically to those people, then you can phrase it however you want. But ultimately, the advice is going to be the same. It is learn the basics of how to evaluate your body. Pick the best place for your gun. Everybody's got their natural landscape. You've got your peaks and your valleys, your curved areas and your relatively flatter areas. That doesn't mean flat like washboard abs. It just means, somebody's got 4 inches of flatter space to the right of their belly button, something like that.
Yeah.
But learn your body's landscape, learn how to evaluate it, and learn how to look for those areas of clothing drape, and then find what you need to keep the gun in that spot.
Interesting. So, clothing drape.
Yep.
That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah.
Or not even a cool. That's literally a concept I've never even thought about. I think.
Yeah, we do a lot of collaboration with Tessa Booth. I think you might have been planning to bring her up later, so I don't want to spoil that. But
yeah. Let's talk about Tessa.
yeah, there's different ways of expressing these concepts, and she has some really good ones. So like John, my husband, John Hauptman calls it an envelope. So if you think of like an envelope of space between your clothing and your body, if you, for example, like most men have wider shoulders than most women, just kind of on average. So you'll tend to have more clothing drape down here, towards your waist than a woman. So if you say, take that like classic hourglass shape, the hips start to flare out. So you typically, if you're female with an hourglass shape, you typically don't have a lot of extra space at the hip line, whereas a man might. So it depends. But if you're kind of looking at that stereotypical outline, that's how that works. So looking for those areas where there's space between the clothing and the body, that's kind of the first step. We see a lot. Somebody will buy a holster, whether it be an Enigma or any kind of holster, and they'll put it on directly in the peak of their belly where their t-shirt is already stretched so tight that you can see their belly button. And they'll put the gun in that spot, and they'll pull the t-shirt over it, and they'll say, hey, this prints. And it does. It absolutely prints because the clothing is already tight in that spot. So of course the gun's going to print. But if you just move it a couple inches over, to the right, where now the clothing is looser against the body, you have much more of an envelope of space. Tessa Booth calls that a concealment bubble, which I thought was a clever way of phrasing it. Because it's not just like, oh, you end up with space here and there's nothing you can do about it. She's got this great video about different tricks you can do to increase your concealment bubble by like tucking in your shirt. So you tuck in your shirt, and the fabric of your shirt blouses over the top of the tuck, and that creates that little concealment bubble. So you can make use of that. So there's a lot you can do to work with what you're given. It's not just you're not just stuck with how you're born.
Well, and that's kind of how I found some of her videos and didn't realize it was an overlap between PHLster and Tessa's channel, so that she is, again, so going on into talking about her a little bit, she is another really good source for people climbing the learning curve of carrying a gun quicker than all of us that started 30 years ago. But so just curious how you and Tessa got together and started working.
Oh man, she is great. She's absolutely great. She has been working for us at PHLster for maybe 2 years. Don't quote me on that. I'm terrible with dates. But we encountered Tessa because we had just seen some of her content on Instagram, and I think she had started her YouTube channel by that point. And we saw her content and we thought, oh, she is clearly an analytical thinker. And she's extremely intelligent, and she gets it. Like, she understands these concepts really quickly, and it's not just that she understands them, because like understanding stuff is kind of the easy part, but she can take those concepts and communicate them really clearly and simply. And that's the beauty of it. Like, John and I are nerds. We're huge concealment nerds. We love to get like really deep into a topic, but no one cares. We're not communicators. Tessa is great because she can take those high level concepts and make them easy for anyone to understand. So we saw that and we're like, oh. At the time, I think we had like just released the Enigma, or we were like prototyping it. We hadn't released it yet, maybe. But we saw her work and we're like, oh, we gotta like figure out a way to hire her. we gotta figure this out. And I was still working at the hospital at the time, and I was still trying to like, oh, like we need to sell a little bit more. We need to do this and that, and then I can quit my hospital job and work full time for the company. And we're trying to figure all this stuff out. And we're like, and we have to figure out how to hire Tessa. So luckily we did, and she's been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, she's great. I could go on and on.
Yeah, my interactions with her and on the show here, we all had a great time, and I love adding people like Tessa to my virtual Rolodex whenever I have a question. That she's helped me a handful of times. But so we can say a shout out to Tessa. I bet she listens to this. But
yes, follow on Instagram and YouTube. I think the channel used to be called Armed and Styled, but I think now it's just Tessa Booth. So
okay,
definitely follow and subscribe if you are not already, because her content is great. Really, anything she talks about is great. She's got a lot of early work on concealment. And then now, recently, she's been doing a little more in the world of competition shooting. And she just applies that same analytical thinking to competition. It's very cool to see.
yeah, I've been watching her, and recently I think she got a new pistol from Walther. Got a new, I think, a steel frame PDP. She's excited to take the competition. Yeah, and I love that she's sharing her videos of competition too. Now, so this I do want to bring up at least you guys have some other holsters, like you've got the Pro and you've got the Floodlight, all of which have really unique ways of attacking the problem of how a holster works. Number one, all your products.
It was almost within arm's reach.
Oh, so you have something there you're going to show?
Oh yeah. It's you had kind of asked earlier when we were talking before the show. You had asked if we had anything new coming out, which
Yes.
kind of.
Yes. So let's talk about.
It's like we got some. We've always got works in progress, always, and we're always exploring new something or other. So at any given time, we have a number of projects. Most of them we can't really talk about, just because we don't want to get people excited if it's a dead end. Because part of the prototyping and development and inventing process is you reach a lot of dead ends. That's kind of the point. So part of it's that, and part of it is just kind of a professional courtesy, is that we don't want to talk about stuff that we can't actually deliver on yet.
Sure.
But this one I can pretty comfortably talk about. So this.
Oh, awesome.
This we've showed before. This is our Floodlight holster. And the cool thing about this is, there we go. It's ribbed. So it has channels, and the surface of the holster is smoothed. So rather than, all the little holes around the clips being a 90-degree corner that pokes you, it's all kind of rounded out and smoothed. And we call that comfortscape. So if you take the landscape of the holster and kind of smooth it out, that's comfortscape. And this is not anything new per se, but we're taking this technology and we're going to be expanding it into some of our other holster models. So it's a very slow process. So we have no ETAs for any of this stuff. But that is what we're working on behind the scenes. One of the kind of major things. So yeah,
Well,
it's
and
not
I
exciting in the way that like the Enigma was kind of like different and exciting, but we're excited about it just because it works really well. We've had a lot of broad customer feedback now. I would say almost everyone who has one of these new floodlights has talked about how much more comfortable it is than the old one. So I'm really excited to start bringing that to our some of our other models.
the way I look at that comfort scape is it's almost like you're also creating gaps to where there is space between the body and the holster. There's it reduces this. I would say it reduces the surface area where the holster is touching the body. That all seems to make sense to me. So you're filling in space with the small slats that would normally just allow a sharp corner, which is what you're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly it. And it's not the best camera on this tablet that I'm using, but maybe you can kind of see. So it's basically bridging. So it's like bridging all of like this would be kind of a sharp corner. At the bottom down here, this would be a sharp corner. So it's kind of bridging over those points and smoothing them over. And then in between, there's little channels where I'm not going to say that it's breathable. It's not breathable. You're still going to know you have a holster on and you're still going to sweat. But I wore this for like 2 weeks when we got our first prototypes back, and it was like the least I had ever sweated with such a giant holster. Because this is the floodlight too, and it's huge. It's huge. Sometimes, I'll have like petite women ask if they should get a floodlight, and I'm like, no, do not, do not get this holster. It's enormous. I can barely carry it in a hoodie, but it's for duty size guns and duty size lights. So what we're working on is taking this technology and kind of downsizing it into some of our non-light bearing holster models.
Ah, that's cool. You know, I when I first saw that, it's funny. Your company has created unique enough takes on common solutions. What I mean by holsters and let's just say the carrying option of a holster in place of a belt becomes the Enigma, etc. But each time I've thought, that's strange. I remember when I first saw the floodlight, but that is a strange looking holster. But then again, I started looking into it more. I was like, you know what? There's a lot of thought that was put into this. So
Yeah,
that's cool. I think you really should be excited about that. To go from to me, I'm not the type that carries a weapon mounted light.
yeah, me either.
So but to me, taking that technology of the holster and putting it in a non light bearing type gun, that's a really cool idea.
Oh, well, thank you. And can I just say that I appreciate your mindset because everything we make is different and weird. And there are a lot of people out there in the world who they see something different and weird and they're like, I hate it. Just by like reflexively, they just hate anything new. And it's not common for people to see something new and actually be open to look at it and say, oh, well, maybe. Well, it's normal to be skeptical, but it's unusual for people to see something like that and understand how it works and why it might possibly be beneficial. So we're extremely fortunate in our friends and our community members that we've kind of like cultivated a lot of people who see deeper into things. And that's really awesome. That's just something I want to point out and highlight because I don't think it gets enough attention.
Oh well,
90% of the gun
thank
world is
you.
still like two world wars. So like
Oh,
to be able to see something different
it's
is cool.
so there's part of me. that is closed-minded about things, and that's probably where I recoil at first. That's odd, but at the same time, I've been foolishly wrong way too many times in my life that it's taught me to slow down and try and take in what I don't understand, and that there may be a reason for it. And there's, to me, learning something new is just so fascinating. Even the one of my favorite things that I've heard tonight is the clothing drape. That's very simple, but it's also opens up a new way of thinking and explaining. I mean, the concealment bubble or the clothing drape. I can tell you right now, with my a little bit too rounded belly for my own good. Now I understand what that is right there. It's a clothing drape that allows me to conceal a Glock 19.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about myths, concealment myths. One of the biggest concealment myths is that skinny people have an easier time concealing than overweight people, and that is not usually the case. I'm not going to say never the case, but it is very beneficial to have a little layer where you can kind of, not only does it affect where your clothing drape is, but to have a little layer of belly fat so that you can take your gun and pull your belt tight and that gun kind of squishes in a little bit. That's
Mm-hmm.
very beneficial. One of the hardest body types to conceal on is, straight hips, straight shoulders. This thing called anterior pelvic tilt, which is when your pelvis tilts forward and your back kind of arches. And if you're skinny, that is one of the toughest body types to conceal on. And everybody thinks, well, I'm round, I'm apple shaped. I'm going to have a harder time concealing than everyone else, and that is not the case. As long as you dress to fit your body, you usually will have an easier time. It can still be challenging to get comfortable, but that is a universal struggle. Everybody has trouble getting comfortable. It's just, what kind of trouble do you have?
Mm-hmm. And have someone like you and Tessa and your husband that have researched it too, or not just researched, but tested it, tried so many things to try and address those things. And I don't want to go through the end of the podcast and at least mention another kick-ass product that you guys have is the modular wedge kit.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, man, I mean, I think you've had it maybe for a year or two now, but I remember seeing a post from Craig Douglas talking about this system and I think he was keeping it close to the vest, and even who had made it. And I'm lucky enough to be friends with Craig enough to shoot him a text. What is that? What is that? Well, it's Sarah and John at PHLster. Don't tell anybody. you know?
Yeah, we send him a lot of stuff. He is a uh, he is, I would say, hard on gear in the very best kind of way.
Yeah.
And if you send him something, he's gonna test it hard. So we end up sending him a lot of stuff because he has a high level of knowledge, and he is a very devoted practitioner. And you know that if you send him something, he's going to tell you what's wrong with it. Or if he says, okay, it's pretty good, then it really is pretty good.
Yeah, Craig's a great guy, and
Oh,
and
he's
to
awesome.
to conduct the not just himself, but the laboratories he holds every flipping weekend of the year, basically.
Yeah.
He would
He
be a really good beta tester, I'm
he
sure.
sees a lot. He sees so much in that. That's all just kind of it's kind of like he's like a computer. He kind of like just kind of vacuums up all of this data, and it's all there. in the back of his mind. So, yeah, he's a great resource and just a really interesting person to talk to.
Well, I'll tell you, people may get tired of hearing us talk about him, but he's a very special person in this world, and a lot of us are thankful to have him around. So now, I think we've come to a good point in the show to ask a couple of fun questions
All right.
before I let you go, Sarah. Now, the first question is, we can't have someone on from one of the best holster companies in the world to not ask her what her carry system is, what type of pistol you usually use, and what holster, etc. I mean, what types of clothing you use. Give us the gamut, because it'd be interesting to hear what you do.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, um, first I'll explain my context and my needs. So my typical mode of dress is like kind of suburban soccer mom. I
Hmm.
don't wear a lot of pants with belts. It's typically like kind of very casual or athleisure style. Occasionally I wear jeans. And my needs are I ride horses. So whatever I use has to be able to survive bouncing around. I've been bucked off many a time. So
Oh wow.
I'm not. I don't consider my risk profile and my safety needs particularly high, um, but my holster has to be tough and it has to be secure just to survive my hobbies. So, um, so yeah, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And the reason I say that is because I don't want anyone to assume that because I carry something, that's what they should carry. Not at all.
Yeah, yeah.
The Enigma is not for everybody. The gun that I carry is not for everybody. You got to choose what's right for you, for your lifestyle, for your body,
Amen. Amen.
and it's not about the gear. It's always about the knowledge first. So, anyways, that
Oh
out of the
yeah.
way. So my one of my biggest priorities is concealment because I'm in and out of a lot of places that are not particularly gun friendly. A lot of my friends are they're not. Some of them are kind of anti-gun. A lot of them are kind of neutral. My general policy is don't ask, don't tell. I don't rub it in their
Hmm.
face. If they ask, I'll talk about it. I'm happy to. If they have questions, I'm happy to answer. But I'm not going to be like, "Hey, check it out! It's my gun." Like that's not my style. So I prefer discretion. So my concealment needs are high. My activity level is high. So I chose a SIG P365. I go between the P365 and the P365 XL, kind of depending on where I'm at. Um,
Hmm.
like weight wise, I have a window of weight where if I gain 5 pounds, I don't want to carry the XL. But if I gain 10, then I can carry it again. So there's like a window of like, there's like a
Awesome.
window of opportunity for larger guns. And this is very common for women. Sometimes your body type will change like throughout the day. Like, depending on what you eat for lunch or where you're at in your cycle, you'll put that gun on and you're like, oh, today's not the day. I got downsize. So, anyways, P365 is what I carry most of the time. And then I carry the P365 XL kind of seasonally in the winter, or if I'm in the weight range for it, I'll carry that in the summer as well. And both of those are guns that I can shoot reasonably well. And, you know, those smaller guns are a little bit of a compromise. But the P365 XL, I feel, is so easily shootable that
Hmm.
it's barely a compromise. I don't even feel bad about it. I'm not going to carry my whole competition rig around town. So that's a good compromise. And then, of course, I do carry that in an Enigma because, I mean, I have all these like community altruistic goals, but at the end of the day, I was like, oh, I invented this faceplate idea because I thought it would work for me, and it does.
Awesome.
So yeah, I use that. Um, and let's see, what else did you ask? Clothing?
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I think you covered it all.
yeah, yeah.
It's the
I'm
type of dress that you use. I love all the commentary about. It's just interesting the whole clothing drape, the whole differences in how we can change weight quickly. I'll tell you,
Mhm.
I can lose 3 pounds in 2 days,
Oh
or
yeah.
gain 3 pounds in one day.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're making me feel better about myself, because some say, why am I having such a hard time concealing this gun under this shirt today?
Oh, that is
But
totally normal. Totally normal. And then you add in, you start to add in like female hormone fluctuations and your whole body can change. Like that's normal for a lot of the population. And again, that's why I say it's not about your gear, it's about your knowledge. Because if you eat a big slice of pizza and you go, you feel bloated, and the shape of your stomach changes halfway through the day, you can look down and say, "Oh, my gun is printing. You know what I need to do? I need to add just a little bit of extra wedge, and I need to move it this way. And oh, look, now it's gone." So if you have that knowledge, it's not like you just learn it once and then it's wasted forever. And it's like you apply that knowledge every day.
well, that's awesome. I think our listeners can learn so much of this and open their minds to not just getting to one place with one holster and thinking that that's always going to be the solution, and maybe even have things that they just feel like they have to deal with, when if they maybe take a look at your site, take a look at Tessa's material, they may learn something that's going to change it for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, one last question.
All right.
After I ask you how people can get a hold of you and where to go, all these great places to get information from, because again, everybody listening here, Sarah and her husband John PHLster, they have an amazing amount of info. Just go to their site. Go to their site tonight. It's PHLster.com, and spell that for them.
That's PHLster.com. I think it's actually PHLsterholsters.com, but yeah, I think either one will get you there. We're on YouTube at PHLster, PHLster, Instagram, and Facebook, the Concealment Workshop. Highly, highly recommend joining that group. You do not have to have any product to join it. It's for everybody. We talk about all kinds of holsters. It is a brand group, so it's a lot of our holsters, but it's
Awesome.
it's everything, everyone. We will help anyone who comes to us in good faith. So we answer a lot of questions, and the community answers a lot of questions. It's a really, really good group of folks. So if you're on Facebook, go to PHLster Concealment Workshop and join that. If you're going to join, answer the membership questions. We know you're not a scammer.
Well, I'll be doing that here in just a little bit because it
Oh, I
sounds
thought you were already
fun.
in there. No, all right.
I was not. I am sorry. I will be.
Oh, it's great.
Now,
You will love it.
well, so here is the time of the show for the most important question.
Oh,
Okay, here it is. What are your three favorite bands and or musical artists?
ooh, okay. That's changes about weekly, but I just started playing mandolin, and
Ah, yeah.
oh, I love it, love it. And one of the first songs that I learned was "Bring It On Home to Me" by Sam Cooke, and I absolutely love that song. It's beautiful,
Cool.
beautiful. Um, let's see. So that's one. Um, who else? I would say I've been listening to a lot of Tupac lately. That holds up
Oh,
really
wow.
well. I know all the music from my youth is like old now, um, but it's still
Same here.
good. I'm still like really loving it. I'm trying to think if there's a new artist that I like. Yeah, I haven't been following him, but there was one a couple years back named Lupe Fiasco, and that I really liked as well. So, yeah, good stuff.
Well,
So that's
so
what I've
let me
for
just
today. If you ask in a week, it'll probably be
say it
different.
again. Ask in a week, it'll be different.
Yeah,
Well, just as long as whatever music it is, you crank it up and sing it really loud when you're
mandatory.
by yourself.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, you know what, Sarah, this has been a fun time. Glad I finally got to talk to you on here. Um, Fascinating information. I'll be honest. Just lots of little tidbits that have made me think, and that are going to equip me, especially working with females. And as I roll down this instructor, hill, as we roll down a hill like a snowball, we gather all these things, and it's just all these things that, since in the gun world, it's, we know, 95% male, and so it's easy to take that for granted. But I've also been teaching a lot of females, and I just want to make sure that I have some of these issues in my mind as I'm teaching them, so I don't just go, "Hey, you should get this holster, you should get this belt and this gun." I'm better than that.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is, even more than ever, I'm going to send them your way, because I also, in one of my pistol classes, in my 8-hour defensive one pistol class, I do a section on gear, concealed carry, you know the way in which you can learn to conceal a gun. And I'll have to say, I mentioned your company, and actually I demonstrated with an Enigma that here is an option. So,
I can do
but
one better than that actually. So
what's that?
for you and any other instructor who is looking to add a block on concealment to your curriculum, all of our graphics, all of our videos, our ebook, our blog, all of those things are free for you to use. They are free for you to reproduce. So
Wow.
if you would like to add slides to your PowerPoint, if you want to add videos or whatever to your curriculum, you absolutely feel free. This is all free. This is for the community, and I really hope people use it and get a lot out of those resources.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah, you can find all of it on that Basics of Concealment Mechanics page that you mentioned earlier. So that's on the PHLster website. I think it's under the Learn tab. If you click the Learn tab,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see Basics of Concealment Mechanics. Everything's on there. It's got the graphics. It's got the ebook. Everything that we have. So you're welcome to. You don't need to ask. You can just do it. It's free for everybody. And yeah, you're free to use that stuff in your slides or your presentations, however you'd like.
Boy, I will take you up on it, but just know that I would always give credit, even though you definitely don't seem to care, because you're so giving. Obviously, you've got a big heart, I can tell, and you care about the community, and your company shows it. Your approach shows it. And just again, thanks so much for coming on, Sarah.
Thank
I look
you.
forward to seeing you at the next TACCon. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be at this one coming up,
Oh,
but I'm sure you'll be at the next one, and I'll make sure I get to hang out with you and take your class.
that would be great.
Well, you have a good evening.
You too. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Bye bye.